nerds, welcome to a new Ronin review, because you're sitting there with your Nintendo Switch and you are thinking, by God, I've got this awesome Hori D-pad controller, and now I want to just bypass all of this. I want to plug my Switch in and dock that motherfucker, and I want to play on a controller. But that Nintendo first-party Pro controller is expensive AF. We're talking $70, $80 for that puppy. What's a good alternative? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am Adam Ronin, and today we are reviewing the wireless Horipad from, you guessed it, our buddies over at Hori. Okay guys, so we're going to talk about the things that we always talk about. Build, features, how does it feel, how does it look, what do we think about it? So the first thing right off the bat, if you've ever compared with the first party controller, the Pro controller, and this, you're going to notice something right off the bat, that this is considerably bigger. This is going to fit in your hands, assuming if you're like me and you have the giant hands of a Sasquatch, not including our very own Sasquatch, but I think our hands are probably very comparable. This fits snug as a bug in a rug, if you know what I'm saying. The first thing that you'll notice when this controller is in your hands is the weight of it. So if you were to compare with Nintendo's first party and this, there is a considerable difference in the weight. And that's because it's missing a lot of the internal innards that you would get on the regular official Pro controller, which we'll get into here in a bit. So it's made of a very comparable plastic that you would find on that D-pad controller that we reviewed last week. Very similar plastic, however, on the sides here are a nice little grippy bit of plastic. It's not rubber per se, but it does fit in your hand, and if you're like me and you sweat like a goddamn fountain, it's nice in your hands. It's not gonna slip and fly all over. On this, you do have all the typical face buttons. You're gonna have your regular X, Y, A, B. You have a nice D-pad here. You got your sticks, your triggers, and your bumpers. You have the share and the home button, and your plus and minus button. You don't have the amiibo scanning section of that, but we'll get into that when we're talking about the stuff that's missing. But it does have all your standard face buttons and all the regular buttons that your controllers would have. When we are talking about how the buttons feel, it's a little bit of a hit and miss situation. So face buttons I think are nice. They do protrude a little bit, and they have a little bit of a clicky, sticky feel to them, which is not bad. Like I don't mind that at all. However, when we get up to the triggers and the bumpers is where one of my three biggest qualms with this controller lies. The bumpers are fine. However, the triggers I could not be less into. It doesn't have a lot of satisfaction from just standard to fully pressed. There's not a lot of, where you just feel like you're pressing in on the trigger. It's got that, just a little squishy, almost like you're kind of pressing in on a pillow type of situation. It's my least favorite part of the controller. So on this, there is no replaceable battery. The battery is inside and is a rechargeable battery. So there is some caveats to that do lead to a couple of downfalls with this controller. So let's say you're playing Breath of the Wild, or you're playing a single player game that's going to take a lot of gameplay hours and a lot of long play sessions. When this controller does die, you will need to plug it in to recharge while you play. Now, that's no different than other controllers, right? You get your Xbox controllers and stuff like that, PlayStation, plug it right into the system, no big deal. However, this box, these controllers have no included cable with them to do that. That's strike two. You need to buy a separate cable, if you don't already have one laying around the house, micro USB. And the strike three is the fact that it's not a USB-C charging point, which all of the first party Nintendo stuff is built around the USB-C charging and the cables. So you have a separate charging cable, and if you don't already have one, we didn't have one laying around, so we had to buy one. So that's an added purchase if you don't have one laying around. However, let's talk about some positive stuff, because this is not all bad. This is a good controller for several reasons. I mentioned before in the D-pad controller review that Nintendo controllers have they've evolved into a life of their own as collectible entities. So the visual aesthetic of these is really where it's at. So for this particular Zelda one, it's got the intricate Triforce design on it that's just, God, it just looks so sexy. Especially if you just have a lot of Nintendo stuff just laying around, and especially with the way the controllers are for Xbox and PlayStation, you could really amass just a really cool collection of controllers that would look good on the shelf, which these absolutely do. If I was to pick between the two, it would be really hard pressed, because I love the simplicity of the Zelda design, especially with this gold Triforce design, but I love the vibrancy and everything of this Mario design, where we have the Mario logo and then just the ever so subtle mushrooms and question mark blocks. Super attractive design here. Another thing that it does have, because it doesn't, like I mentioned, have a lot of missing features, but what we do have with this is the motion control. So it does have the accelerometer built into it, which is a good selling point here. So let's talk about those missing first-party features, because as I said, there are some things missing here. So this controller is going to be retailing you at $49.99, and to be able to achieve that cheaper price point compared to the Pro controller of the Nintendo, which is we're at like $70, $80 with that. The way they were to knock $30 off of this was excluding Rumble, or excluding Amiibo scanning support, of course the subtraction of the charging mechanism for this. So those three things out there are getting you the cheaper price point. So when we're getting into the overall thoughts and opinions about this controller, you're looking at $49.99, but you're paying for what you get, because you know what you're missing. The build and the feel of the controller, while still light, is a very solid build for this controller. Hori never has a problem making solid builds for their stuff. Their fight sticks, their other third-party controllers. Gone are those crazy days from the 90s and the early 2000s with like Mad Catz with their crazy, ugly nonsense. Third-party controllers are really great for the value, and there's no exception here. This is an excellent controller for the value. Of course, I do wish that we had a little bit different build for the triggers. I do wish we had included cable. Those are the biggest gripes for this. But, you know, especially because I know who our audience is. I'm talking to you, fighting game players. Mortal Kombat 11 is on the cusp, coming out for the Nintendo Switch. Now, for me, primarily, I'm going to be playing that docked, and I'm going to be playing that portable with the Joy-Cons, especially the D-pad Hori Joy-Con slapped onto the left side of that. But if you have no options, if you don't have a PlayStation 4, if you don't have an Xbox One, you only have the Switch, but you still want to play Mortal Kombat 11 or Samurai Showdown or these other games coming out, this is an excellent purchase. Now, there are other third-party controllers out there like Power A. We don't have hands-on with those, so we have a hard time doing the comparison for this, but I've always been a big fan of Hori products, and we have a good relationship with Hori, and I would still, if this was a terrible controller, I would tell you it's a terrible controller. I will always give you the honest opinion, and the D-pad on this is exceptional. That is the key thing. So if you are looking to get into these new fighting games that are coming out, because that's really kind of our bread and butter, this is an excellent purchase, and it's not going to break your bank. Whereas if you decided you wanted those extra features and you got the Nintendo controller, you're going to be spending an extra $25, $30, which maybe could be used for the combat pack, if you know what I'm saying. So, do I think this is a buy? Absolutely, I think it's a buy, just like everything else, if it works in your scenario and your situation. D-pad is good, face buttons are good, triggers, not so good. Charging cable, that's a bummer. It is what it is, but you're getting a solid controller for a substantial discount compared to the official stuff. So anyways, guys, that's our quick look at the wireless Horipad from Hori for the Nintendo Switch. Good stuff. We always love reviewing the Hori products. They've never made it's just a bad product. Everything we've ever looked at has always been super quality, and I look forward to looking at more stuff from Hori. Guys, I want to know what you think. This has been out for a little while. Have you ever had your chance to get your hands on with this? Is this something you're interested in? Let me know in the comments below. I, as per usual, am Adam Ronin. Behind the camera is Gordy, who is going to give you a quip.
Da 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 da.
Is the black one better than the red one? Who can say? It's all preference, whatever the fuck you like.